The massive doors of the council chamber slid open with a sound like thunder. Ambassador Lisa Carter walked through them, her black diplomatic uniform sharp against the alien architecture that surrounded her. Behind her walked Captain Jake Morrison, his military dress blues a stark reminder that Earth came to this meeting prepared for anything. The chamber was enormous, big enough to hold representatives from 847 different species. Floating platforms held delegates with tentacles, wings, crystalline bodies, and forms that human eyes could barely understand. At the center of it all sat the High Council, dominated by the towering figure of High Counselor Vexthal of the Kethari Empire. Lisa had been Earth's ambassador for 10 years. She had seen this chamber many times, but today felt different. The usual chatter between species was quieter. Eyes that normally showed curiosity when looking at humans now showed something else. Pity, maybe, or fear. Ambassador Carter, the human species. Vexthal's voice boomed to the chamber's translation system. His forearms moved in what Lisa had learned was a gesture of formal address. You have been summoned to hear the Council's decision regarding your species' continued membership. Lisa felt her heart skip. This was not supposed to be about membership. The emergency session had been called to discuss trade routes in the Outer Rim. She glanced at Jake, whose hand moved slightly toward his sidearm before stopping. Even here, in the heart of galactic civilization, old military habits died hard. High Counselor, Lisa said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. Earth was not informed that our membership was under review. We have followed all Council protocols and contributed to every joint effort requested of us. A sound like laughter came from several of the alien delegates. Vexthal raised one of his four hands, and the chamber fell silent. That is precisely the problem, Vexthal said. His massive head turned toward the human delegation, eyes that looked like black holes focusing on Lisa. Your species has been part of this council for 50 Earth years. In that time, you have shown disturbing patterns. The chamber's holographic display activated, showing images from across human space. Ships engaged in combat training, colonies with defensive installations, research facilities working on weapons technology. You militarize everything you touch, continued another council member, this one a floating jellyfish-like creature named Caxtor. Your colonies are fortresses. Your merchant vessels carry weapons. Your research focuses on destruction rather than creation. We defend ourselves, Jake said, speaking for the first time. His voice was calm but carried the weight of someone who had seen real combat. The galaxy is not always a peaceful place. And that attitude, Vexthal said, is why we are here today. The holographic display changed, showing a star map of human territory. 37 colonies spread across local space, connected by trade routes and military patrol schedules. The Council has made its decision, Vexthal announced. Humanity's probationary status has been reviewed. You're deemed too aggressive, too unpredictable, and too dangerous to remain in civilized galactic society. Lisa felt the blood drain from her face. Around the chamber, alien delegates shifted in what she had learned to recognize as approval. This had been planned. This had been decided before she even walked through those massive doors. The order is simple, Vexthal continued. All human colonies beyond the Sol system must be abandoned within 30 standard days. All military vessels will be surrendered to Council forces for decommissioning. The human species will accept permanent quarantine to your home system of Sol. And if we refuse? Jake asked, his military training keeping his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were hearing. Vexthal's arms spread wide in a gesture that needed no translation. Then the Council will take corrective action. We have maintained peace in this galaxy for 3,000 years. We will not allow one aggressive species to threaten that peace. Lisa's mind raced. 37 colonies. Millions of humans who had been born on those worlds, who had never seen Earth. Families, businesses, entire civilizations that had grown up among the stars. All of it to be abandoned because the Council had decided humanity was too dangerous. I request a brief recess, Lisa said, to consult with my government. Vexthal's eyes narrowed. There is nothing to consult about. This is not a negotiation. This is an order. Nevertheless, Lisa said, standing straighter, I am Earth's representative, and I speak only with Earth's authority. I need to contact my government. The chamber erupted in sounds from hundreds of different species. Some seemed amused, others annoyed. The idea that any species would delay responding to a council order was apparently unthinkable. Vexthal raised his hands again and quiet returned. Very well. You have 1 hour to contact your homeworld. But understand this, Ambassador Carter. The council has spoken. Your compliance is not optional. Lisa walked to the communication station that had been set up for the human delegation. The connection to Earth would take several minutes to establish, given the distance involved. As she waited, she could hear the alien delegates talking among themselves, their conversations flowing to the translation system. They will comply, of course, one said. No species has ever refused a council mandate. The humans are young, said another. They will learn their place. It is better this way, added a third. Quarantine will teach them humility. The communication link activated, and Lisa found herself looking at the familiar face of President Helen Brooks in the White House Situation Room. Behind the president, she could see General Paul Hayes and Admiral Karen Stone, along with other members of the National Security Council. Lisa, the president said, her voice carrying across the light years instantly through quantum communication. We've been monitoring the session. We heard everything. Madam President, Lisa said quietly, they're demanding complete surrender, not just military disarmament, but abandonment of every human presence beyond Sol. They're talking about quarantine, about keeping us locked in our own system forever. President Brooks was quiet for a moment. Then she said, What's your assessment, Lisa? Is there room for negotiation? Lisa looked around the chamber, seeing hundreds of alien faces watching her with expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt. She thought about the colonies, about families who had built lives among the stars, about the principle of freedom that had driven humanity to space in the first place. No, Madam President, she said. This is a negotiation. This is a demand for a complete capitulation. I see, President Brooks said. She looked at something off-screen, probably consulting with her advisors. When she looked back, her expression was firm. Lisa, you're authorized to give them our answer. Lisa closed the communication link and walked back to the center of the chamber. Vexthal looked down at her from his massive platform. For arms crossed in what she had learned was a gesture of impatience. Well, he said, what is your government's response to the council's order? Lisa Carter, representing all of humanity, looked up at the most powerful being in the known galaxy. Around her, 847 species waited to hear Earth surrender. The chamber was completely silent. No, she said. The word hung in the air like a challenge. For the first time in 3,000 years of council history, a species had refused a direct mandate. The chamber erupted in chaos. The news traveled faster than any ship in the galaxy. Within 6 hours of Ambassador Carter's refusal, every human settlement from the Outer Rim to Earth's moon knew what had happened. The Galactic Council had given humanity an ultimatum, and humanity had said no. President Helen Brooks stood in the White House Situation Room, watching reports flooding from across human space. The holographic display showed 37 colonies, each one now faced with an impossible choice: abandon everything it built, or defy the most powerful organization in the galaxy. The first responses are coming in, Madam President, said General Paul Hayes, his weathered face grim as he read from a data pad. New Boston Colony has called for an emergency referendum. Eden's Gate is holding a town meeting. The mining stations in the Cerberus Belt are organizing their own vote. Admiral Karen Stone stepped forward, her naval uniform crisp despite the early hour. The fleet is already mobilizing, Madam President. Every ship captain has requested immediate orders. Helen looked at the star map, each human settlement glowing like a small flame in the vast darkness. Some of these colonies were older than she was. Families had lived there for generations. Children had been born there who had never seen Earth's sky. What are our military capabilities, Admiral? Helen asked. Karen's expression was honest and blunt. We have 312 ships of various classes. The Council's combined fleet numbers in the thousands. In a straight fight, we would last maybe a week. But this won't be a straight fight, will it? Asked Dr. Richard Clark, the Secretary of Defense. Humans don't fight straight fights. Before anyone could answer, the communication system activated. The face of Ben Clark, colony administrator of New Boston, appeared on the screen. His face was tired but determined. "Madam President," Ben said, "the vote is complete. 7,000 colonists, 0 abstentions. We're staying." Similar calls came in over the next few hours. Eden's Gate voted to stay. The research stations orbiting Kepler's Edge voted to stay. The mining colonies in 3 different systems voted to stay. Even the smallest settlements, places with only a few hundred people, sent the same message. They were not abandoning their homes. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, humanity's flagship. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency, preparing for something that had never happened before in human history: war with an entire galaxy. "Captain," called Lieutenant Sarah Walsh from the communications station, "we're receiving signals from the other ships in the fleet." "Put them through," Jake said. The main screen split into multiple windows, showing the faces of human ship captains throughout local space. Captain Amy Rodriguez of the U.S. Defiance looked as determined as Jake felt. Commander Steve Mitchell of the U.S. Courage was already reviewing tactical data. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jake said, "you all know why we're here. The Council wants us to surrender our ships and abandon our colonies. How do you respond?" "With respect, Captain," Amy said, her voice carrying the accent of someone born on Mars, "that's not going to happen." Steve nodded agreement. "My crew is ready, sir. Whatever the plan is, we're in." One by one, every captain gave the same response. 312 ships, representing every human military vessel in space, declared their intention to resist. Meanwhile, on the capital world of Centauri Prime, High Counselor Vexthal met with his War Council. The chamber was smaller than the main council hall, but no less impressive. Ancient Kethari warriors, their 4 arms decorated with the marks of 1,000 battles, surrounded a holographic display showing human space. "They cannot be serious," said Fleet Admiral ZYX Koth, his scarred face showing disbelief. "No species has ever refused a council mandate. They must be bluffing." "The intelligence report suggests otherwise," replied Counselor Hexrack, her younger features showing the confusion of someone who had never encountered defiance. "Human colonies are not evacuating. Their military vessels are taking defensive positions. They appear to be preparing for actual resistance." Vexthal studied the display, his ancient mind trying to understand what he was seeing. In 3,000 years of rule, the Kethari had never faced open rebellion. Species that joined the Council followed Council orders. It was a natural way of things. "How many ships can we deploy?" Vexthal asked. "The combined Council fleet numbers 15,000 vessels," ZYX Koth replied. "When we add client species and allied forces, we can field nearly 20,000 ships." "Against 300, Hexrack added. "The humans will be outnumbered 60 to 1. Vexthal nodded slowly. "Then this rebellion will be ended quickly. Issue the orders. All available ships are to mass at the edge of human space. When we move with such force that no other species will ever consider defying the Council again." Back on Earth, the Situation Room had become a command center. Military advisors, scientists, and diplomatic experts worked around the clock, planning for something that seemed impossible: the defense of human civilization against overwhelming odds. Dr. Nicole Webb, the head of Luna Base's research division, presented her latest findings to the assembled leadership. "Project Thunderbolt is ready for deployment," she said, her voice carrying the excitement of scientists who had just solved an impossible puzzle. "We've been working on quantum disruption technology for 15 years. The Council species don't understand quantum mechanics the way we do." "What exactly does it do?" President Brooks asked. "It disrupts the quantum fields that their ships use for faster-than-light travel," Nicole explained. "Hit them with a thunderbolt pulse, and their ships become sitting ducks in normal space." General Hayes leaned forward. "How many can we build?" "We have enough components for maybe 50 devices," Nicole said. "But if we can get them installed on fast ships, they could do serious damage to a larger fleet." The planning continued through the night. Humans had always been good at finding creative solutions to impossible problems. Now they would need every bit of that creativity to survive. On the mining station of Cerberus Belt, Danny Ford put down his tools and looked at his crew. For 20 years, they had extracted rare minerals from the asteroid field, sending them back to Earth and the colonies. Now their mining equipment was being converted into something else entirely. The laser cutters can be modified into weapons, Danny told his team. The mass drivers we use to move asteroids can launch kinetic projectiles. Hell, we can even use the asteroids themselves as ammunition. His crew, men and women who had spent their lives in the harsh environment of space, nodded grimly. They understood what was coming. The Council would not be gentle in their response to human defiance, but they also understood something else. Freedom was not something that could be given or taken away by others. It was something you claimed for yourself, and once claimed, you fought to keep it. Across human space, similar scenes played out on every world and station. Farmers became soldiers. Scientists became strategists. Merchants became spies. An entire species was transforming itself from a collection of peaceful colonies into something the galaxy had never seen before. A united front of humans who refused to surrender. The Council had given an order. Humanity had answered with one word. Now both sides prepared to see what that word was truly worth. 3 weeks remained until the Council's deadline. The galaxy held its breath as two forces prepared for something that had never happened before, a war between the established order and a species that refused to accept its place. Ambassador Lisa Carter stood in her office on Centauri Prime, looking out at the alien city that sprawled beyond her window. For 10 years, she had walked these streets, learned these customs, built relationships with dozens of species. Now she was about to lose it all because her people had said one simple word. The door chimed, and she turned to see Ambassador Kexval of the Vorthak Collective. The tall, blue-skinned alien moved carefully into the room, his large eyes showing the worry that his formal diplomatic training tried to hide. "Lisa," he said, using the informal name that marked their friendship, "you know I cannot be here officially." "But you're here anyway," Lisa replied, gesturing to a chair that had been modified for Vorthak physiology. "Why?" Kexval sat down, his 3-fingered hands folding in his lap. "Because what the Council is doing is wrong, and everyone knows it. Your species has not broken any laws. You have not attacked any other worlds. Your only crime is being different from what the Kethari expect. Then why won't your people help us?" Lisa asked. "Because we are afraid," Kexval said simply. "The Kethari have ruled for 3,000 years. They have ships, weapons, resources that could crush my entire homeworld. What can the Vorthak do against such power?" Lisa understood. Fear was a reasonable response to overwhelming force. But understanding it didn't make the situation any less desperate. "There are others who feel the same way," Kexval continued. "The crystalline beings of Sigma Draconis are quietly sending supplies to your outer colonies. The Tellurian mining clans are refusing to provide raw materials for Council warships. It's not much, but it's something." "Thank you," Lisa said. "Every little bit helps." After Kexval left, Lisa returned to her reports from human space. What she saw there gave her more hope than any diplomatic support could provide. On the agricultural world of Eden's Gate, Colony Administrator Rachel Stone stood before a crowd of 10,000 colonists. Behind her, construction crews worked around the clock to build defensive installations. The planet that had once been known for its peaceful farms was becoming a fortress. "We have offers to evacuate all non-essential personnel," Rachel announced to the gathered crowd. "Earth has sent ships to take anyone who wants to leave." The crowd was silent for a moment. Then a voice called out from the back. "Where will we go?" "Earth," Rachel replied. "Mars. Any of the inner colonies." "This is our home," another voice said. "My children were born here. My parents are buried here. Why would we leave?" The crowd murmured agreement. These people had built lives on Eden's Gate. They had farms that had been passed down through families. They had communities that had grown over decades. The idea of abandoning it all because some distant council had decided humans were too dangerous was unthinkable. "Then we stay," Rachel said simply. "All of us, together." Similar scenes played out across human space. On Luna Base, Dr. Nicole Webb worked with her team, to deploy the Thunderbolt devices. The quantum disruption technology was their best hope of evening the odds against the Council fleet. The theory is sound. Nicole explained to Captain Morrison over a secure communication link. When a ship enters faster than light travel, it creates a quantum field around itself. Disrupt that field, and the ship is forced back into normal space. And then what? Jake asked. Then they're just another ship with conventional weapons. Nicole replied, still dangerous, but not impossible to fight. How many do we have? 52 devices, installed on our fastest ships. It won't be enough to stop their entire fleet, but it might give us a chance to hit their command ships. The work continued across human space. On mining stations, industrial equipment was converted into weapons. On research bases, scientists worked on new defensive technologies. On agricultural worlds, farmers learned to use hunting rifles against armored troops. But the most important work was happening in the realm of information. Lieutenant Commander Chris Baker stood on the bridge of the UES Hornet, the smallest warship in the human fleet. At 28, he was the youngest captain in the service, and he had volunteered for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. Are you sure about this, Chris? Captain Morrison asked over the communication link. Once you cross into Council space, you're on your own. We can't help you. I understand, sir, Chris replied. But someone needs to tell the galaxy what's really happening here. The Council is claiming that humans are dangerous aggressors who threaten galactic peace. People need to know the truth. The truth was more complex than either side wanted to admit. For 3,000 years, the HFY Empire had maintained order through a simple system. Powerful species ruled, weaker species obeyed. Client races provided resources and labor in exchange for protection. Rebellions were crushed quickly and completely. The system worked because it was backed by overwhelming force, and because most species accepted their place in the hierarchy. The HFY were ancient, powerful, and had the ships and weapons to enforce their will. But humans had never learned to accept their place in any hierarchy. Chris Baker's ship, the UES Hornet, was fast and small enough to avoid detection by most Council sensors. Its mission was simple: penetrate deep into Council space and broadcast a message that would reach every inhabited world in the galaxy. Message ready for transmission, Captain, reported as communications officer Ensign Maria Santos. Send it on all frequencies, Chris ordered. The message was brief but powerful. It contained Ambassador Carter's refusal, recordings of the Council's ultimatum, and most importantly, classified information about the HFY Empire's treatment of client species. The information had been gathered over 50 years of careful intelligence work. Forced relocations that separated families. Resource extraction that left worlds barren. The systematic suppression of technological advancement among species that might one day challenge HFY dominance. But the message ended with something even more powerful, a simple question. The humans said no. Chris Baker's voice carried across the galaxy. What about you? The message reached the Tellurian mining clans first. Species had been enslaved for generations to extract minerals for HFY ships. In the deep mines of a dozen worlds, Tellurian workers stopped their digging and looked at each other with something they had not felt in centuries: hope. It reached the aquatic worlds of the Nereid systems, where entire oceans had been drained to provide water for HFY colony ships. The fish-like Nereids had always been told this was necessary for galactic stability. Now they learned it was simply theft on a planetary scale. It reached the gas giant refineries where the insectoid Zephyrians worked in conditions that would kill most species, processing fuel for the Council fleet. The Zephyrians had been told they were contributing to galactic peace. Now they learned they were enabling galactic oppression. On the Council capital world of Centauri Prime, High Counselor Vexthal watched the reports flood in with growing alarm. The human message was spreading faster than any containment effort could stop it. 17 client species have ceased production quotas, reported Counselor Hexrak, her young face showing panic. The Tellurian mining clans have declared a general strike. 3 Nereid worlds have announced they are withdrawing from Council protection. And our fleet? Vexthal asked. Fleet Admiral ZYX Kota's scarred face was grim. Still massing at the edge of human space, but we're losing ships daily. Client species are recalling their vessels. Some are refusing to provide crews for council ships. Vexthol stood at the center of his war room, watching his empire begin to crumble. For 3,000 years, the Kethari had ruled through fear and overwhelming force. But fear was a fragile foundation, and the humans had just shown the galaxy what happened when someone refused to be afraid. How long until the fleet is ready to move against human space? Vexthol asked. 2 days, ZYX Koth replied. Maybe less if we use emergency protocols. Then we move immediately, Vexthol declared. This rebellion ends now, before it spreads any further. The humans will be crushed so completely that no species will ever again consider defying the Council. But even as he spoke, Vexthol knew that something fundamental had changed. The human message had done more than inform the galaxy about Kethari oppression. It had asked a question that would echo across 1,000 worlds. What about you? For the first time in 3,000 years, species across the galaxy were starting to answer that question, and many of them were learning to say the same word that humans had said. No. Lieutenant Commander Chris Baker's message had been broadcast for less than 48 hours, but had already changed the galaxy forever. On worlds that had never questioned Council authority, species were beginning to remember what freedom meant. The effect was immediate and dramatic. On the mining world of Talier's Prime, Foreman Grixtal led his crew out of the deep shafts for the first time in decades. The insectoid Tellurians had worked these mines for 6 generations, told that their labor was essential for galactic stability. Now they learned they were simply slaves with better propaganda. No more. Grixtal announced that thousands of workers gathered in the main cavern. His translated voice echoed off stone walls that had never heard such words. We have given our lives, our children's lives, our world's resources to the Kethari for 300 years. Today we choose to give no more. The strike spread to 12 Tellurian worlds within hours. Mining operations that fed the Council's war machine ground to a halt. Raw materials that would have become Council warships remained buried in alien ground. On the ocean world of Nereid's Deep, Queen Corlin floated in the sacred waters of her people's capital city. The aquatic Nereids had always been told that the massive water extraction operations were temporary, that the Council needed their oceans for emergency terraforming projects. Now they knew the truth. Their water was being used to fill swimming pools on Kethari pleasure worlds. The waters of our ancestors will flow no more to alien worlds, Queen Corlin declared, her bioluminescent body flashing with colors that meant determination in the Nereid language. We declare the independence of all Nereid systems. Let the Kethari find their own oceans to drain. 3 Nereid worlds declared independence within the hour. Their small but advanced fleets, designed for underwater operations, began moving to defensive positions around their homeworlds. The rebellion was spreading faster than anyone had expected, but it was also forcing the Council to act before they were fully prepared. High Counselor Vexthol stood in the command center of the Kethari flagship Dominion, the largest vessel ever constructed. Around him, holographic displays showed the Council fleet in all its terrible glory. 15,000 ships of every conceivable design, representing 3,000 years of technological advancement and military might. The fleet is ready, High Counselor, reported Fleet Admiral ZYX Koth. All ships report battle readiness. Vexthol looked at the tactical display, showing human space. 37 small colonies defended by just over 300 ships. By any reasonable military calculation, the coming battle would last perhaps an hour. But reports from across the galaxy suggested this was about more than military calculation. 47 species had now declared independence from Council authority. Client races were refusing to provide resources. Some were even withdrawing their ships from the Council fleet. Begin the advance, Vexthol ordered. All ships, maximum speed toward the Sol system. We will end this rebellion at its source. The massive fleet began to move, a wave of destruction heading toward human space at faster than light speed. It would reach the outer human colonies within 6 hours. But the Council was not the only force preparing for battle. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching his tactical display as human ships took their positions throughout local space. Unlike the Council's massive formation, the human fleet was scattered across dozens of systems, each group positioned to strike quickly and then disappear. All ships report ready, Captain, announced Lieutenant Sarah Walsh from her communication station. Final status report, Jake ordered. Fleet strength, 312 vessels of various classes. Reported Commander Lisa Park, the fleet's tactical officer. Thunderbolt devices deployed on 52 fast attack ships. Colonial defense platforms are active on all major worlds. Civilian populations have been evacuated from forward positions. Jake nodded. The numbers were still terrible, but they were better than they had been a week ago. More importantly, humans were about to fight the way they fought best. Not as a formal military formation, but as a network of interconnected, stubborn, and creative individuals. Signal from Earth, Captain, Sarah announced. President Helen Brooks appeared on the main screen, speaking from the White House Situation Room. Behind her, military advisors monitored incoming intelligence from across human space. Captain Morrison, the president said, you have full authority to conduct military operations as you see fit. The entire human species is counting on you and your people. We won't let you down, Madam President, Jake replied. I know you won't, Helen said. But remember, Captain, this isn't just about military victory. This is about proving to the galaxy that free people can stand against tyranny. Win or lose, make sure our example inspires others to claim their own freedom. The communication ended, leaving Jake alone with the weight of an entire species' hopes. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency, preparing for the most important battle in human history. The Council fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel, at the edge of human space, exactly 6 hours later. The massive formation was so large it could be detected from 3 star systems away. 15,000 ships, arranged in perfect battle order, advancing toward humanity's colonies like an unstoppable tide. At the center of the formation, High Counselor Vexthal reviewed the tactical situation with his commanders. The human colonies were spread across 37 systems, but most were lightly defended. The plan was simple. Overwhelm each defensive position with massive force, accept a human surrender, and begin the process of relocating the entire species back to Earth. First target is the mining station at Cerberus Belt, announced Fleet Admiral ZYX Koth. Intelligence reports indicate minimal defensive capability. Proceed, Vexthal ordered. But as the Council fleet approached the asteroid field, something unexpected happened. The mining station didn't try to run or hide. Instead, it broadcast a message on all frequencies. Council fleet, this is Administrator Danny Ford of Cerberus Belt Mining Station. You are entering human space without authorization. Turn back now or face the consequences. Laughter echoed to the Council command ship. The idea that a mining station would threaten the largest fleet in galactic history was absurd. Destroy the station, Vexthal ordered. But before the Council ships could fire, the asteroid field around them came alive. What had looked like natural rocks were revealed to be hollowed-out defensive positions. Mining lasers, converted into weapons, began firing from dozens of hidden positions. Mass drivers launched chunks of metal at relativistic speeds. The asteroids themselves became weapons as mining charges turned them into kinetic projectiles. Impossible. ZYX Coast shouted as Council ships began taking damage. How did a mining station become a fortress? The answer was simple. Humans had spent 3 weeks turning every colony, every station, every outpost into a potential battlefield. They had taken their industrial equipment and converted it into weapons. They had taken their knowledge of their local systems and turned it into tactical advantages. Most importantly, they had taken their refusal to surrender and turned it into something the galaxy had never seen before, a united front of free people willing to fight for their freedom. The battle for Cerberus Belt lasted 2 hours. When it was over, the Council fleet had lost 37 ships to destroyed human positions. But the real damage wasn't military. It was psychological. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Kefhari had been hurt by a species they considered inferior. As news of the battle spread across the galaxy, species that had been watching from the sidelines began to make their own choices. The Zephyrian gas refineries shut down their operations. The crystalline beings of Sigma Draconis openly announced their support for human independence. Even some Kefhari client species began questioning orders. Status report. Vexthal demanded as his fleet regrouped. "We've lost contact with 41 client species," reported Counselor Hexrack. 17 more have announced a withdrawal from Council authority. Our supply lines are collapsing, and our fleet is fragmenting as species recall their ships. Vexthol looked at the tactical display, watching his empire crumble in real time. The humans had done something he had never thought possible. They had shown the galaxy that the Keth-Hari could be beaten. "Prepare for full assault on the Sol system," Vexthol ordered. "We end this now, before it spreads any further." But even as he gave the order, Vexthol knew that it was already too late. The human message had asked a simple question: "What about you?" Species across the galaxy were answering that question, and their answer was changing everything. The word "no" was spreading across the galaxy like wildfire, and once it started burning, it could not be stopped. The final battle began at exactly 0600 Earth Standard Time. What remained of the Council fleet, now reduced to roughly 8,000 ships after defections and the fighting at Cerberus Belt, dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. High Counselor Vexthol stood on the bridge of the Dominion, looking at the blue-green world that had birthed humanity's defiance. Earth hung in space like a jewel, surrounded by the industrial platforms of Luna and Mars, defended by what appeared to be humanity's entire remaining fleet. 300 ships, reported Fleet Admiral Zwaxkoth, his scarred face showing satisfaction. Still outnumbered 25-1. This ends now. But Captain Jake Morrison, commanding the human fleet from the bridge of the UES Liberty, had no intention of fighting a conventional battle. Humans had learned long ago that when you're outnumbered, you change the rules of the fight. "All ships, implement Thunder Protocol," Jake ordered. Across human space, 52 ships equipped with Dr. Nicole Webb's Thunderbolt devices began moving into position. These were not the largest or most heavily armed vessels in the human fleet. Instead, they were the fastest, designed to strike quickly and disappear before the enemy could respond. The UES Hornet, commanded by Lieutenant Commander Chris Baker, was the first to engage. His small corvette streaked toward the Council formation at maximum speed, dodging between the massive enemy ships like a fish swimming through a school of whales. "Target locked," reported Ensign Maria Santos from her weapon station. "Thunderbolt device ready for deployment." "Fire," Chris ordered. The quantum disruption pulse spread out from the Hornet, like a wave, washing over a section of the Council fleet. Instantly, 47 enemy ships found themselves forced back into normal space, their faster-than-light capabilities completely disabled. "It worked," Maria shouted. "They're dead in the water." Similar scenes played out across the battlefield as human ships struck the Council fleet with hit-and-run attacks. The Thunderbolt devices were devastating against ships that depended on superior mobility and advanced technology. Stripped of their technological advantages, Council vessels found themselves fighting on even terms with human ships for the first time. But the real surprise came when the first Council ship tried to destroy a human colony. The Keth-Hari battleship Retribution, one of the most powerful vessels in the fleet, targeted the research station orbiting Jupiter. As its massive plasma cannons charged for a killing blow, something unexpected happened. "Sir," reported the battleship's sensor operator, "I'm reading massive energy signatures from the research station. They're powering up something big." Before the Retribution could fire, the research station launched its own attack. But this wasn't a conventional weapon. Dr. Nicole Webb and her team had spent 3 weeks building something that had never existed before, a quantum cascade amplifier. The weapon struck the Retribution and kept going, its effect spreading from ship to ship through the Council formation like a chain reaction. Within minutes, half the remaining Council fleet found itself unable to use any advanced technology at all. "Impossible," Vexthol roared as reports flooded in from across his fleet. "How do they have weapons we've never seen before?" The answer was simple. Humans approach technology differently than other species. Where the Keth-Hari refined existing designs over thousands of years, humans innovated constantly. They took risks, tried new approaches, and combined technologies in ways that more conservative species would never attempt. But the technological advantages, impressive as they were, paled beside the psychological warfare that humanity was waging on a galactic scale. As the battle raged in the Sol system, similar conflicts were breaking out across the galaxy. The Tellurian mining clans had seized control of their home systems. The Nereid worlds were defending themselves against Kethari punishment fleets. Even species that had never shown signs of rebellion were beginning to question Council authority. On the bridge of the Liberty, Jake Morrison received a message that changed everything. "Captain," Lieutenant Sarah Walsh announced, "we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Assembly." "What Galactic Assembly?" Jake asked. "It appears to be a coalition of free species," Sarah replied, her voice showing amazement. "They're requesting our assistance in forming a new galactic government based on voluntary cooperation, rather than forced obedience." The transmission came from Queen Coralyn of the Nereids, speaking on behalf of 312 species that had declared independence from Council authority. "Humans of Earth," she said, her translated words carrying the weight of history. "Your refusal to surrender has inspired the galaxy. We offer our support in your fight for freedom, and we request your help in building something better than what the Council has given us." Jake looked at his tactical display, watching human ships dart between Council vessels like David fighting Goliath. Then he looked at the communication from the Galactic Assembly, representing more species than had ever cooperated voluntarily in galactic history. "Put me through to all ships," Jake ordered. His image appeared on screens throughout human space and beyond, carried by the same communication networks that had spread Chris Baker's original message. "This is Captain Jake Morrison, commanding the Human Defense Fleet," he said. "We are not fighting this battle alone. 312 species have declared their independence from Council tyranny. Together, we represent the free peoples of the galaxy." The effect was immediate. Across the Council fleet, ships began receiving messages from their home governments. Species after species was recalling their vessels, refusing to continue fighting for an empire that had oppressed them for centuries. High Counselor Vexthal watched his fleet disintegrate around him. Ships were withdrawing from the battle. Entire formations were breaking away to return to their homeworlds, and his own Kethari commanders were beginning to question orders for the first time in their lives. "Sir," reported Fleet Admiral Z. Weixkoth, his voice hollow with defeat, "we've lost operational control of the fleet. Less than 1,000 ships remain under our direct command." Vexthal stared at the tactical display, seeing the end of 3,000 years of Kethari dominance. The humans had done something he had never thought possible. They had convinced the galaxy that freedom was worth fighting for. "Signal the human fleet," Vexthal ordered, his 4 arms hanging limp at his sides. "Request terms to surrender." The message reached the Liberty within minutes. Ambassador Lisa Carter, who had traveled from Centauri Prime to witness humanity's final battle, stood beside Captain Morrison as they composed their response. "High Counselor Vexthal," Lisa said, speaking to the being who had once commanded her obedience, "humanity does not accept surrenders. We accept partnerships. The Galactic Assembly offers the Kethari people a place in a free galaxy if you choose to take it. The war ended not with the destruction of the Council fleet, but with its transformation. Ships that had come to enforce obedience became the foundation of a new galactic navy dedicated to protecting freedom. The Kethari Empire, which had ruled through fear for 3 millennia, dissolved peacefully as its client species chose their own paths. 6 months later, Ambassador Lisa Carter stood before the first session of the Free Galactic Assembly. The chamber was even larger than the old council building, designed to accommodate representatives from over 400 species. At the center, where the High Council had once sat in judgment, was a simple podium where any being could speak. "The question that started this revolution was simple," Lisa said, her voice carrying the beings across the galaxy. "When the Council gave humanity an order, we answered with one word. That word was no." She paused, looking out the faces of species that had learned to claim their own freedom. "But no was just a beginning," she continued. "The real power came from the question we asked next. What about you?" Today, 437 species have answered that question. They have chosen freedom over security, self-determination over obedience, and cooperation over domination. The applause that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever heard. Hundreds of species, each with their own way of showing approval, created a symphony of celebration that echoed across the stars. In the years that followed, the Free Galactic Assembly became a model for voluntary cooperation between species. Trade flourished, Technology advanced at unprecedented rates, and conflicts were resolved through negotiation rather than force. The Kefhari, freed from the burden of ruling an empire they had never wanted to maintain, became some of the Assembly's most valuable members. Their ancient wisdom and advanced technology, shared freely rather than hoarded, helped dozens of species reach new levels of prosperity. And on a small blue-green world called Earth, children learned the story of how their ancestors had changed the galaxy with a single word. They learned that freedom was not something that could be granted by others, but something that had to be claimed by those brave enough to say no to tyranny. The Galactic Council had given an order. Humanity had answered with one word. That word had set the galaxy free.